being with us again today. It's a long waited for interview. Today, we're on with Dr. Richard Boylan, who, by the way, was of great help getting us information for our exclusive first unveiling worldwide of the Tall White Show with Charlie Hall and the E.T.'s aliens he worked with at Nellis Air Force Base near Area 51, Nevada, USA. We did that show. We've also done shows with Dr. Stanton T. Friedman, shows with Dr. Stephen Greer of the Disclosure Project, and many others who are interested in UFOs. We don't just deal with UFOs, we also deal with the paranormal, folks. So who is Dr. Boylan? Some pretty impressive credentials, folks. Dr. Richard Boylan, Ph.D., MSW, MS Education, BA. He is also a behavioral scientist, an exoanthropologist, and Emeritus University Associate Professor of Psychology and a certified clinical hypnotherapist. He has a UFO Star Visitors website, yes, we'll tell you all about that during the program, which presents his researched information on UFOs and star visitor contact. Yeah, you got a lot to look forward to. Dr. Richard Boylan is also on the Academy of Clinical Close Encounter Therapists. That's ACCET as the acronym. And of course, folks, the doctor is the most noted of researchers on the star visitors and star kids phenomenon, and as such is the director of Star Kids Project Limited. I am now citing a famous quote from the good doctor. This is what he says: "The saga of star visitors' contacts with humankind is the greatest unpublished headline of the millennium and the most important missing fact in our history books." With this quote in mind, we here on the Sweeps Fox Show will be asking Dr. Boylan to add these missing links and facts and to help us understand really what's going on with his Star Kid and Star Seed research, and of course what the meaning of all this is for humankind and our futures. Jumping in, hang on, making the phone call, and cutting to the chase. You are at the right show and the right station.
Just a reminder from me, Jeff Lewis. You can now listen to the Sweeps Fox Show 7 nights a week at 10 p.m. GMT. Real country radio. Tell your friends. Time to tune in, turn on, and take off with the Sweeps Fox Show and Jeff Lewis.
Here's Dr. Boylan.
You need a dram of poachine.
Yeah, poachine, yeah, you know about that, don't you? We have this Irish connection, both you and I. That's great. Yeah. I think Dr. Richard Boylan, since we have him on the phone now, folks, we can call him Richard. I think you allowed for that, didn't you, Doc?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Could you tell us and our listening audience a little bit about your personal journey from, say, your career psychotherapist work to the starting of the Star Kids Project? Would that be a good first question?
Sure. Well, my journey into UFO matter started very young. I've been around long enough to remember my parents discussing the headlines in 1947 when Kenneth Arnold spotted a squadron of UFOs over Mount Rainier, Washington State, U.S.
That's right, I remember that.
And whoa, you know, people from other planets here. And then, of course, 3 weeks later, when the headlines again screamed, Army captures discs near Roswell, that was of interest, too. And later on, when I was in 8th grade, I was certainly old enough to read the newspaper for myself, and did in summer of 1952, when UFOs flew over the U.S. nation's capital night after night.
It's been cut out of our history books.
You don't see big prominence for any of these events there, but, you know,
Mm-hmm.
That was the year before they started the cover-up. And,
exactly so. They didn't know what to do at the time.
Old are around long enough to remember before there was a cover-up, so they can't fool us.
Mm-hmm. Like the Foo Fighters of World War II and everything else, yes?
Yes, exactly. So, in the back of my consciousness all during my growing up years in adulthood has been the reality of UFOs. But it wasn't until 1989, when I'd been many years as a practicing psychologist, that I had something happen for the first time that had not previously happened, and that was had people start to come in, and after they discussed their garden variety problems, they decided to go for broke and mention their encounters with the people from other stars. And they preface this by saying, "Now, Doc, what I'm going to tell you, I fully believe you're going to commit me to the state hospital, but here goes." And I listened carefully, and these were upstanding citizens. These were not mentally ill people. These were not flakes from the community. These were upstanding, solid citizens. And I knew that something was going on here that deserved attention, because, you know, if people from other stars are coming and meeting with ordinary people and giving them messages, this is an extraordinary development that deserves full attention. So I gave it that attention. Soon put out a little notice, tiny notice buried in a weekly paper around here that there's a therapist that'd be willing to hear if you have an account of an encounter that you'd like to share. And people started coming in, and essentially they haven't stopped since.
Right. Now, this was actually in an era before Harvard professor John E. Mack started doing the same thing, working with abductees, right?
Yeah.
Right. So you were a forerunner with this.
Well, one of the early ones, but Dr. Leo Sprinkle, psychology professor emeritus at the University of Wyoming, has me by about a decade or two. He was really out there all alone. He started this stuff in the 60s when nobody was in this, of any professorial repute was in this field.
Mm-hmm.
So good friends, but I was certainly one of the early ones, and took some body blows for my efforts over the years.
I'm sure you did.
Then moving to more of the present, one of the things I noticed as I worked with experiencers, and we had a kind of sharing group for them for a while, over a number of years, and as I watched them and got to know their children and heard about their families, I noticed a new phenomenon came to my attention, that the children of these experiences were much brighter, more rapidly developing, psychic and cosmically aware in ways that really set them apart from the general child population. And this again got my attention. And I began to draw a connection that 1 and 1 makes 2, that these children are advanced because their parents have been visited. And really started to look at that carefully. And of course, with the additional information I got, and many other therapists who work in this field received from people, that when these encounters take place, one of the things that happens with some regularity is that reproductive material is borrowed, and they sometimes see the star visitors on board a craft tinker with it a bit, and then place it back in, and the human later on goes on Earth to have what looks like a perfectly normal child, except they're much brighter, more advanced, and psychic, and so forth. And so it certainly seems to be the case that what is going on is what we would call genetic engineering or gene splicing, putting in some advanced extraterrestrial genes amidst the human genome. And as a result, these kids, who I call star kids, come out who are, I guess, technically hybrids, but looking pretty much like your standard human kid. Sometimes taller, more handsome than average, but strikingly bright and psychic and sensitive and aware.
So you'd say basically that the kids are more enhanced in all regards, consciousness-wise, psychically-wise?
Yeah, physically.
Physically as well?
More robust, more immune to diseases. They seem to grow up faster, and at the other end, watching some star kids who've been around long enough to become adults and senior citizens, I would say they age more gracefully, often don't look their age.
Right.
Seem to be in better shape at the end of life than the traditional human has been.
So it would be more correlation than compensation with these kids?
Well, whatever that means. But
that means that it's all well-rounded. They're not being compensated for something. They're being adaptable.
It's a well-rounded, generally
That's right.
positive package all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
So, then a few years ago, a friend of mine who I was visiting and doing a talk at his area had a visit from the star visitors, and they gave the message for him to give me that I should concentrate in the Star Kid area. They didn't have to do a big sell on that. I've always been charmed by these kids, and so I took that to heart and have made that my kind of number one focus over the last few years. And been working with many kids, Star Kid workshops, Star Kid summer camp, and now my new book is out on Star Kids, the Emerging Cosmic Generation.
That's right. We're doing a piece on that, a review on that on our next newsletter.
Okay. And I think people who are this phenomenon will find in that book a absolutely comprehensive treatment of the whole subject from every angle.
A lot of people mention star kids in the same context as indigo kids or children or crystal children. In other words, what is the difference?
Well, the term indigo child or crystal child was an early attempt to label the new kinds of kids coming in in goodly numbers. And I'm certainly not the only person who's noticed a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to school teachers, and I say to the seasoned ones, tell me, are the kids you're teaching today the same as 20 years ago? And they say, oh, no, they're quite different. They can't quite put their finger on why, but, you know, their comments generally translate to they're much more advanced and sharp and even have different learning styles, the way they process information.
Right,
and,
they definitely cop on quicker.
Yeah, and so these early attempts were flawed in my view. I've read descriptions by the authors. They coined the indigo term, and they made a mistake. They besides some kind of dubious descriptions, they indicated that behavioral problems were part of the package, and that certainly is not the case. These kids are quite normal, if not super normal. Few occasional ones that get mislabeled as hyperactive is because they're bored and restless because they process things so fast. They're sitting there drumming their fingers on the desk while the teacher's trying to explain something for the third time to slower kids in class.
Right.
The crystal kids...
Excuse me. So it's not that they're hyperactive, it's really that they're bored.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. You know, have a need to process information and like to see connections between things. You know, if you stay too long and linear with them, they just glaze over because and get restless because they're very nimble and they like to see the connections between things and not just have one thing hammered over and over.
Right. Richard, you're a married man with 4 children, right?
Yes.
And so the natural question would be, do you have any star kids?
Yes.